What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you for the first time in a minute with the one, the only, Mr. Mort Jensen of Yahoo Sports fame, of HBO Max fame, of which one am I forgetting now? There's ones that before OnlyFans. Yahoo Sports, HBO Max, which oh my God, of the NBA podcast fame, and of course, OnlyFans celebrity. This is what happens when we go live and unscripted. Mort, welcome back. We are here to talk about NBA playoff surprises and disappointments. We're going to begin with the negative end of the spectrum so that we can close on the most positive of notes.
Yeah,
First and
that's
foremost,
the best way to go about it. Yes.
First and foremost, though, how are you doing? Are you enjoying the NBA playoffs? How are things going?
I am. I wish I could enjoy it a little bit more. I'm just working so much these days that I can't really shut off my brain and just watch a game right now. Everything has to be like, okay, what happened here? Like analytical and like what do I need to like pick up on, and then just push everything off to Yahoo as soon as the game is over, which I love, which is great. But I'm looking forward to just having one game or a couple games where I can shut my brain off and just enjoy basketball. That'd be nice.
Shut your brain off and enjoy basketball. So kind of like, well, I don't know if they've been enjoying it, but shut your brain off. The Denver Nuggets might be up there on that end of the spectrum.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're beginning with disappointments, as we said. I think the one that I just wanted to start with was just kind of the macro, like umbrella. Injuries kind of suck, and we could probably say this every year. We did have, I mean, granted, there's still playoffs left to play, but you lose Tatum and Halliburton to Achilles injuries last year. We just had the Dante DiVincenzo Achilles injury from Minnesota. Anthony Edwards is going to miss time. He injured his other knee in the same game that Dante DiVincenzo tore his Achilles. And then just looking, Joel Embiid did play in game 4 in Sixers Celtics, but like he's coming back from an appendectomy after dealing with all this other stuff from him. The Kevin Durant missing 3 of the 4 games against the Lakers. Luka and Austin Reeves also out. J-Dub dealing with another lower body injury for Oklahoma City. There's just, can we turn the injuries off? And it feels like so many of them they're reaching like existential levels too, which is just an absolute bummer.
I feel like every single year we fall into the same trap. We go in and talk about matchups and we talk about team strengths. We talk about all this and that. And I think we built it off of hope that if everyone is healthy and we come back to the same results every single year, which is health seems to be the most vital factor in all of this, that every single year it just comes down to who is most healthy. And it's dreadfully simplistic, but nevertheless, it's a real thing that we have to take into account. And it sucks. It really sucks. Like this first round series without KD in the Lakers Rockets series, like no LeBron, KD, come on, that sucks. It sucks for the game. It sucks for us. It sucks for everyone. Especially sucks for KD. Like around the clock treatment, and just cannot get there. I cannot comprehend just the frustration level he must have at this juncture. And it sucks, man. I want to switch everything off. Unfortunately, this is just a thing that happens. And for some reason, it's the playoffs. It's just, I feel like it's an avenue where these injuries get far more, not relevant. I think it just happens more in the playoffs. I don't know if it's in the intensity, but like in a shorter span of time, we just see so many of these issues. And you're just kind of left with this very, very numbing feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute bummer, and I think the discussions around it lead you to believe, okay, is the season too long? The answer is probably yes. But even in the case of KD, it's what did he rank in total minutes played during the regular season, and then he's just not there when it matters most because now he's dealing with this ankle thing after dealing with the knee thing to start the playoffs. So here's hoping these teams get healthier. The Dante DiVincenzo thing, and then even the Anthony Edwards with it, like kind of just took the air like out of me when I was watching. Like, and that game ended up being like totally riveting because of Ayo Dosunmu and what the Wolves were able to do to the Nuggets in lieu of all those injuries. But the idea that, okay, Dante DiVincenzo done until Tatum didn't come. Tatum tore his Achilles a little bit later and then came back in March. Like, so Dante DiVincenzo, most of his season is neutered for next year. And now it's Anthony Edwards. We're probably not. I'd be shocked if we saw, like, even if Nuggets Wolves went to 7, do we see Anthony Edwards again in this series? It sounded like it needed to be a couple weeks worth of rest for him.
It was a week to week, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
diagnosis week to week. Yeah,
Yeah. So, which is just when you're in the playoffs, that's week to week is your entire season, basically. At
pretty
that
much.
point.
Yeah, and look, I don't think the Nuggets wanted this, obviously, because you want to beat teams that are healthy and not have that asterisk. But currently, they need every ounce of help that they can get, and for them, this unfortunately, because it's injury related, helps them.
I'm not saying it
Yeah.
doesn't help them, but they're another team that's just banged up. When you look at Peyton Watson, Aaron Gordon, whatever, like that dude's having to play through. Nikola Jokic just definitely doesn't look right. I don't think that's an excuse by any means for what's
Agreed.
happened to the Nuggets. With that said, where did you want to go next? Is our next disappointment?
Nuggets. Let's talk about
figured.
Nuggets. Oh my God. I mean, you're right that they don't look the same. I mean, kudos, by the way, to this series to Rudy Gobert to start the series off the way that he did. I mean, the defense on Jokic is the best we've probably seen. I mean, he's done.
Nikola Jokic is shooting 40% on 2-pointers with Rudy Gobert on the court. And I know he's missed a lot of I went through this with Grant a few days ago, like a lot of kind of those flip shots and looks around the basket that he would normally hit. But Rudy Gobert knows, like, he's giving him wide open threes. Jokic is shooting 18% on the from three with Rudy Gobert on the court. Gobert's been absolutely fantastic against him.
He has, and it's probably the best I've seen him defensively, at least on Jokic. And I'm a subscriber to the idea that elite offense will always be elite defense. This series doesn't change it for me, but obviously you need to have a certain push and pull effect here. Jokic, I think, when was the last time I looked? I think it was before Game 4, though, but like his true shooting percentage, let me just look it up right now. 50.6. Oh my God. Like, he's one of the most efficient players in the league, and he's just like way below average right now.
Denver is, and this includes like play-in teams, but they're second to last in postseason offensive rating right now. And the team that's actually in last, having their own problems, is Detroit. So, but like, when would you have ever predicted that Denver would be like have one of the worst offensive ratings through and in a series? Yes, okay, Gobert's been healthy, but if you said Anthony Edwards is not going to be right for all of it, would you have predicted that? So I know the Nuggets are banged up, but their offensive process has been, I mean, you look at what was happening for much of Game 4, especially towards the end of Game 4, like, it just feels it's been a level of dog shit that it normally isn't. Because even when they're losing, you kind of, okay, you understand the process. And you can even see, like, Jamal Murray's had his moments on the offensive end, but you're not feeling Cam Johnson. You're definitely not feeling Christian Brown. And the fact that you're not, like, Nikola Jokic is normally able to transcend those weird vibes, and he just hasn't been able to this series. I don't know whether that's a health thing, an engagement thing. I always try to go back and listen to, like, the team-specific podcast if I start to get an incendiary take on a team. And after that game against the Timberwolves for Denver, in my head, I was just, this feels like it's Denver's last stand, and they're going out sad, and it's pathetic. And I'm just looking at the energy level. I'm looking at, like, some of the things that David Adelman said post-game, and I was like, this is actually pathetic. But whenever I start to veer towards that, I go, okay, if you're emoting like that in between your ears, let me check in on what the people who are covering the team every single day are saying. So I was listening to the DNVR post-game show. They went in on this team in a way that I have not, and I check in with those guys a lot throughout the season, in a way I have not heard. So it validated how I was feeling, and it kind of clued me into, oh, Nuggets fans are, like, they're pretty down bad there. And I don't know, we don't need to write the post-mortem at the moment and talk about what happens this offseason. They're up against the second apron. Are they making big trades? Who actually has value? But this is just, I've peddled the idea that the Nuggets are a contender, that their defense can be good enough. And, like, to their credit, like, the Wolves are not, like, there have been moments, but the Wolves are not setting Denver on fire offensively. Like, 1.13 points per possession for the series is, the offense is supposed to be good enough to where that defense would be good enough. And knowing what Aaron Gordon has been, or how banged up he's been, you'd probably take that coming into the series. But it's like, we're allowing 1.1 points per possession. Yeah, we'll take it. This is just, I don't really even have any other explanation. It's if they don't come out and punch a shorthanded, verging on decimated, just because it's Anthony Edwards not playing, Timberwolves team right in the mouth, anything is on the table. I don't think there's a take that you could throw out there really that would be, or a suggestion. Also, if your take is Nikola Jokic sucks at basketball, okay, like we need to reevaluate. But it does sort of, if they're like energy vampires right now. Even watching them kind of sucks the good vibe. And by the way, we're watching a team with Minnesota that's lost Anthony Edwards, lost Dante DiVincenzo, but it's the Nuggets that are sucking like the positive vibes from me. And it's just sad.
That's probably the best word, honestly. Sad. We saw them bounce back a little bit after that atrocious February, I want to say it was, right? Was it Feb? Where they just struggled and they couldn't get a read on things. And maybe it was March. I don't remember if it was like early March. Maybe they had this period where they just went down bad. They just looked awful. There was no cohesion. And everyone was talking about it. And then they sort of flipped the script a little bit. And you started seeing, all right, they beat the Spurs in that sick-ass game that went to overtime. Like, they started pulling out those wins out of their asses that they've done before. And you're like, oh, okay, now we're getting to that fun stuff. Like, now we're getting to the fun moments. Then the playoffs roll around. And here we are. They're right back to looking as, like, the February, March Nuggets that we all dreaded would return. And I could sit here and tell you, oh, they're missing shots. They're not rotating. They're blah, blah. I don't know. Like, I can sit here and come up with all of the facts of what is going on the floor, just like you can in terms of like what's going on, but like what the underlying current is and what the underlying reason is, I have no idea, because it does look like, I hate to put this word out there, but like the body language, I hate to use it because it's just such a stupid word. Like, how can you really judge someone off their body language when everyone on that team just seems downtrodden and they're pointing fingers. They're not necessarily yelling at each other, but like they're pointing and gesturing all the time, which just is not very much like these Nuggets. It's something is off. I have no idea what it is. And if they somehow move on from this series, I have a sneaky suspicion they're going to get utterly skull fucked by the Spurs.
It's the thing is too, they wouldn't face. Oh yeah, they do face. Do they space the Spurs in the next round? Yeah, because OKC gets 4 or 5. You're right. Right. I don't think it's not unfair to look at Denver's body language, because the end of Game 4 was complete loser shit by Jokic, running up at like, first of all, get back on defense that quickly throughout the game, and then maybe the end result winds up being different. I know that Jaden McDaniels said like some stuff like post game, like we're talking about all the Nuggets were bad defenders. It was clearly so over the. First of all, that's what the playoffs are supposed to be about. But I'm not a fan of the unwritten rules of like don't score at the end of the game. No, get back on defense. Don't leave someone that wide open. It was also kind of funny that he ran that quickly just to get like daddied in the end. Like, he didn't do anything. Like, what did he actually do? So that was also another moment where it's okay, like, what is going on in Denver? Well, clearly you're frustrated, but like, what was the point? You put yourself at risk. What if you got more than a fine? Or maybe it's because your teammates left the bench. Like, did you incite something where they could have gotten suspended and they didn't? We know that now. Just absolute loser stuff from that team. And I'm so curious to see how they respond in Game 5. But you kind of alluded to this. They could win this series, and coming back from 3-1 is difficult. I don't care like who the Wolves are. Not that I don't care, but the Wolves are missing Anthony Edwards. They're a good team still, and it's hard to win 3 consecutive games in the postseason against a postseason team. It proves absolutely nothing, because look who the Wolves don't have. They could come out and win these next games by 15 points each, 15 or more points each, the next 3 games, and it wouldn't prove a damn thing. And they have to now go into this next round, then ferrying the burden of proof. But not only that, no one's 100%, but you were probably, this might be the deepest team Nikola Jokic has ever had. This also feels like, I know they're not missing Jamal Murray, but just because we've never had a season where Jokic has this serious injury stretch, it felt like they're more banged up than usual, because, okay, you have Murray, but the Watson, the Jokic, and the Aaron Gordon of it all. So now you've expended all this energy just to come back against the Wolves, to run into what is right now a machine in San Antonio. I don't have answers for them other than like a lot of these, especially when it comes to Murray. Look at his efficiency on the pull-up threes, and the way, even when he's gotten space, the space they're giving Jokic to work with on the offensive end, I like, again, kudos to Rudy Gobert, but a lot of it also feels is like Jokic is just missing shots that he should be hitting or has hit. And I know the 3-point efficiency has dipped since he's come back from injury, but it's still been shocking to see him. I'm just not used to seeing him this bad, this ineffective. And again, kudos to the Wolves defense for that, and to Rudy Gobert specifically. But this team right now in this moment feels fundamentally broken.
I mean, of the top 6 players, minutes received players right now, on the Nuggets, the best overall shooter is Cam Johnson at 44.1%. Everyone else is below.
And it's funny too, because Cam Johnson has grabbed the torch, except he seems more of an outlier with this, where remember with Michael Porter Jr., he'd always be shooting 40+% from 3, but it just felt like he was so streaky. Cam Johnson feels the same way, but times infinity, to where it almost seems like he disappears more on offense, or that he's not making as many shots as he does.
And it's an unfortunate development, because I did not have this perspective on Cam Johnson coming into this year. Like, I thought, like, yes, I've known he run hot and cold, but not to the extent that we've seen him do in Denver. Like, remember how he started the season? It was dreadful, just utterly dreadful. And now he's back to that, at least from 3. And he's had these swings throughout the season. And then he had like this huge, I think, what was it, like a month and a half where he was like, was it 52-44 splits from the field? Like, where he was just hitting everything. Like, there's just no middle ground with this team right now. Like, and Jamal Murray, we know, also a guy who can run hot and cold. We know the same thing is true with Tim Hardaway Jr. He's made a career out of being that.
But the thing is Tim Hardaway Jr. shouldn't be this important to the Nuggets. The reason he is because of Cam Johnson and Christian Brown specifically.
Yeah, I agree.
Which, I'll call myself out here. I don't remember what I said about Christian Brown's extension specifically, but I remember being harder on the Dyson Daniels extension than the Christian Brown extension. And there is a chance, with the way that he has played this season, with a lot of what we've seen now, that Christian Brown contract has a real chance to age into one of the league's absolute worst.
I loved it at the time, but again, the year he was coming off, I thought was sustainable, because I just thought he played smart basketball all year long, which frankly he did. I'm not going to sit here and second guess my own analysis. The year he earned that contract, he was playing the best basketball I've ever seen him. I thought he had this very analytical approach to the game. And then the injuries happened this year, and he just could not find a rhythm. Look, if this is the way the Nuggets are going to go out, it's on a whimper, and that sucks.
There will be changes, which if they lose, that's when we could talk about it. I'm up. I'm going to go with my pick. Let's talk about, since they're going to play imminently, let's talk about the Detroit Pistons, and more specifically, Jalen Duren, but also I think the Pistons at large, to be down to, kudos to the Magic, who might show up in another section, but I picked Pistons in 5, I believe. There are people who thought Detroit was this fraudulent 1 seed. I still don't subscribe to that, but everyone wanted them to do more to boost the offense at the trade deadline. They just didn't. And now you get into this series, and the way that Orlando, like, hat tip to Wendell Carter Jr. here, but the way that they've kind of completely taken Jalen Duren out of his element and made everything so much harder, and to where Detroit is just resorting to different things, and it's Jalen Duren is like driving more in some of these games because they can't get into the actions with Cade as quickly. He's shooting 22% on drives in this series. His paint touches have plummeted. This system was averaging 9 points per game for this. He scored 27 points through the first 3 games. That's disastrous for them. And you don't want to sit there and say, like, yeah, Tobias Harris has been way more important for us on offense than Jalen Duren is. Like, that's a really bad spot to be in. But it does, to me, bleed in. And I think the center or the big man rotation in general, like, you're not feeling Isaiah Stewart as much either in this series. And that's another dude where I think one of the levers that Detroit could pull is maybe you go into 5-out mode, or 4-out in their case, since they have some shooting liabilities on the wing. But if Isaiah Stewart isn't going to be an actual, like, modest volume guy from 3, that you can't even do that. And also, he's the type of player, yeah, okay, shoot your threes. We're not going to guard you anyway at this point. And Donis Jenkins, not been good this series. Ron Holland II getting a DMP coach's decision in that last loss. Like, having to, like, maybe we need Kevin Huerter in this series. they're just in a very uncomfortable spot. And this, maybe they still beat the Magic overall, but you have to have a ton of questions about them when you're looking at some of these subsequent series, because look at what potentially awaits Detroit in round 2. It's either the Cavs, who I don't think anyone expected them, or ideally you're not losing both games in Toronto, but they're a team that just has a ton of offensive firepower, more than the Magic in theory. So if they get out to if they get out to a big lead, do you have the offensive firepower to make up for those? And then in Toronto, you think Orlando is going to ugly up this series. I got some news for you about Toronto. They're going to ugly the fuck out of it. Collin Murray-Boyles has been spectacular. The way that Scotty Barnes has been on defense all year, the way that they can kind of play in the half court if they're not getting out in transition, they're going to put a ton of pressure on your offense. But Jalen Duren is probably, this is a recycled take that I had when Grant and I were doing our week 1 observations. If he doesn't kind of come out of this or prove that he can be more of a, if you're going to give him the ball and he's not in the paint, can he get there without the help of Cade Cunningham, or can he hit some more difficult shots, or can he do more as even a passer? He's probably cost himself quite a bit of money heading into restricted free agencies. Again, I said all this a few days ago, but I really thought the Pistons, and part of this was about the Magic. We talk about abject emotional disasters in Denver. I thought the Magic were just mentally checked out, it sort of felt like. And so I believe I had Pistons in 5, and here we are. It's Detroit that is now going to need to stave off a 3-1 series deficit.
I had Pistons in 6 over at Yahoo, and I was the one most skeptical of them. And there's a reason for that, because at the top of your analysis here, you said you weren't one of the people who had been generally skeptic about them. I am. I was one of those people. I trust the defense to enormous levels. The offense, to me, was just never, ever a good playoff fit whatsoever. For them to not go out and make a push for someone at the trade deadline. And look, I don't know if Lauri Markkanen was available. I don't know if someone else was available for them. I'm not going to sit here and guess. But the fact that they didn't go out and make some type of push on an offensive-minded player, especially one who can spread the floor, is a loss. Like, you are coming into this series with one good shooter in your primary rotation. That's Duncan Robinson. One good shooter. This is the NBA in 2026. What the utter fuck did you think would happen? Honestly. Like, you don't win games off of solely defense anymore. You just don't. You need to have offensive efficiency. And I know that that's a term that all the, like, I'm putting this in air quotes, real ballers out there are saying, oh, that's geek language. You know what? It's at the top of when you're looking at prospects. Like, again, scouts all over the league are looking at players who are projected to be efficient scorers at the NBA level. And this is where people are going to probably complain. Cade, all right? I like Cade. I like him a great bunch. The MVP thing, the MVP wagon, whatever you want to call it, was always completely ludicrous in my eyes. Completely ludicrous. Good-ass player. I like him as a basketball player. I really do. The guy has middling efficiency. Good defender. Going to give him that. Very good playmaker. But unless you're able to consistently step up and elevate your game, especially come the playoffs, and elevate your game does not mean just taking more shots. It also means converting them. And he's not converting them at the rate that you need. I know. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Hit me. Hit me. Tell me his 57% true shooting percentage is great. Come on, Dan.
It's not saying that it's great, but I also think the context is important, where you have 4 Orlando Magic defenders tilted towards him at all time. You need to put him in situations to succeed. And so I'm not, like, in terms of the MVP debate, what was the debate about whether he should be 5th? Because no one was saying he should win MVP. No, that wasn't it. That feels like a straw man argument.
There was like a push in January for him to get like elevated over a couple people where I was like, this is nuts.
Okay, so that's a take that's aged in how many months? And
yeah,
we're revisiting,
fair enough. I concede, but my point remains that I think we're looking at. I think he's been presented in a light that he's, the primary tier 1 superstar. I think he is closer to Paolo Banchero than he is, for example, a Luka Doncic. If that makes sense.
No.
No? All right. I'm still sticking with it. That's where I'm at. You and I also very much disagree on some of these guys. But I do agree that the context is important. Like the fact that they didn't go out and get another floor spacer is certainly not helping him. I think one of the things that I'm not going to put on Cade, for example, the
Turnovers.
19 turn. Yeah. Yep. I'm not going to put that on him. That is just like, what can you do? Like you're dribbling into a crowd because no one respects the shooters that this guy has alongside him. The turnovers, I'm just like initially I was like, oh, come on, he's turning the ball over a lot. But like, yeah, all right. But you're also seeing two guys cheat off of Oscar Thompson and Jalen Duren. Like, what is the guy to do? Yeah.
He had a drive in the third quarter of, by the way, I keep like hitting fast forward on the Magic Pistons series. I did a couple spots over the weekend, and I was just like, yeah, like they were just awful in game 4, which hasn't happened yet. Like it was right after game 3 I did it. But he had a drive in the third quarter of game 3 where he wasn't even waiting for the screen at this point because I think he's like given up on like everybody else around him. And he just gets into the lane, it was with his left hand, and there's just like all 5 Magic people are just there and nobody else. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do. He tried to throw a pass and Orlando's hands are everywhere. So, and there are some turnovers you could put on him. Like why sometimes he's dribbling the baseline. It's why are you doing that when you know the Magic are approaching you on defense? I'm not trying to say that you can look at Cade's efficiency and say X. I'm not trying to give him a complete pass, but he was missed time with a collapsed lung. And I've said the same thing with Paolo. I think that Cade is substantially better than Paolo. He's proven he can play in different ways, and just the playmaking, they're on different.
Oh, he's better than Paolo.
Yes. They're in different galaxies, but the context of the team around them is important. And I think Detroit's supporting cast, Jalen Duren makes it seem higher end, but like Orlando was so injured that they might be better built to win the way that, like, in spite of their limitations than Detroit is at this point, which is why I'm sure Pistons fans are tired of hearing people harp on it, but it is why people constantly revisit the trade deadline. And it's why you talk about Jalen Duren's next contract, because how much can you pay this guy if you it's different if you think he needs to be a 3-4 versus a number 2 option. That's a big difference. And also with Detroit, it's if you're going to try, like, Ron Holland's kind of a chaos creator and energy guy for them. If he's not going to play, given how Donis Jenkins has played this series, I know he hasn't been great, and this was something else I was wrong about. I loved them adding Caris LeVert. Like, then maybe you need to hit the Caris LeVert button more often, like, just to, because he is someone in theory. If it's not going to be Jenkins, who is the secondary ball handler, the second creation guy on this team, then it needs to be Caris LeVert. So I think the bigger issue is just always going, like, if we're harping on Donis Jenkins and Caris LeVert, there's a chance that Detroit has already lost the series. Jalen Duren is the biggest pivot point, because I think at this point you need to figure out how to free him up more. It's not going to be something that he can take upon himself or beat what Orlando is throwing at him when you're looking at the bodies he's seen or the way that they've walled off the paint for a lot of this series.
I agree. It's one of the series that I was dreading a little bit, because remember, everyone was rooting for the Hornets to come in there because fun and the contrast and whatnot. And I frankly, I think the Hornets would have won that series based off the regular season play that we saw. If we then took into account what we saw in the play-in, oh God, no. But for the Magic here, there's a Spider-Man meme thing going on here, just in terms of like their strengths and weaknesses. I think Detroit has a far better defense just in terms of like their upside. But as you alluded to, Orlando, like the injuries that we've seen all year long, like this group has just not played a lot together. And that has probably played a big part in them wrapping up, was it 16th, 15th or 16th in defensive efficiency this year, somewhere along those lines. Like they ended up in the middle, roughly in the middle.
Yeah, and the talent, you always thought the talent, like that team was better than their defensive.
Right. But and that talent wasn't available. So now it is. I mean, I want to just use one example here. So like, let's take an Anthony Black type here. He's playing at 1/2 of basketball every game, 24 minutes, 2.3 steals, 1.7 blocks, and the numbers don't even do it justice how active he is. Like, this is a guy coming off the bench, and he's just a wrecking ball defensively. Just long, lanky, athletic, smart, really intelligent in terms of, like, positioning. Like, they have this guy who can turn defense into offense off the bench, and it can help that, create that symmetry with the starting lineup too. When you go to Detroit, yeah, they have this very, very stable defense, but where are the disruptors who isn't named Oscar Thompson? Like, who is the guy who will consistently push the ball or just make a play on the ball, force turnovers, and just be disruptive as hell? Outside of Thompson, who is that guy?
I think Ron Holland could fit that bill, but Detroit is clearly
playing.
trying to find something offensively and
Right.
can't. And I don't know whether that falls on the overall roster construction or if they were banking on Jalen Duren to be someone he's not. But yeah, I mean, to your point about the Magic's defense, they're just big. They can be active, and they have two guys like Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black who can be absolute.
Yeah.
Like Jalen Suggs is the consummate psychopath, but also just even Franz Wagner. I don't think he's like necessarily looked great this series, but he's held up defensively in some tougher matchups, even though it doesn't look like he's moving well. Paolo Banchero, you could say the same thing for him. Wendell Carter Jr. has been pretty good on defense.
Carter's been excellent, just excellent. Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
but yeah, that's just if the Pistons can't figure out, like the Jalen Duren is the pivot point here for me because everyone else is supposed to be like. Not that they're supposed to be neutralized, but you kind of understand, okay, this was what we signed up for coming. Like even the Donis Jenkins and the Carousel, like you knew that these were just going to be wild cards. Maybe even thought, I don't know how many minutes Ron Hollins can play in the postseason, but like Jalen Duren's not supposed to be the one where it's, all right, maybe you could say, yeah, all right, he's shooting 33% with Cade off the floor. I knew that was going to happen. He can't be shooting 40% with Cade on the floor. And just like the quality of looks is, again, Orlando's defense is nudging them out a lot of what Detroit is so used to doing. How do you go about? I don't have a solve for that one. Like that's another like with Denver. Like I just don't have an answer. Like what do you do to put Duren in better spots at this point? I think the one thing you can do is you need to shift the roster construction, like to have more reliable shooters, so that you can't get away with the way he's being covered because he's not someone who looks like he's going to transcend it.
Agreed.
Who's your next pick for the disappointments?
Mikal Bridges.
I refuse to. Yeah, no, you're right though.
Yeah, right. I'm just this guy. Remember just when he was in Phoenix, and I'm just gonna avoid the whole, him turning into an offensive star in Brooklyn thing. But when he was in Phoenix, he had this motor about him, which even though he wasn't a primary shot taker, even though he wasn't necessarily heavily featured within the flow of the offense, like he had so many games where he didn't really get a bunch of shots, but he would always find a way to get you points. He would always find a way to open lanes. Because he was just running around like a madman. And it was so determined. His movements were always so determined. This first round series against Atlanta, I have no idea what the hell he's doing out there. Everything is just so random. I don't think he is playing off the ball as well as he should. I think he's forcing stuff. I don't think he understands that the one dribble midi pull-up is there virtually every single time he wants it and he doesn't utilize it. He's passive. At times he just stands in the corner with a thumb up his ass. I just don't understand what we're seeing right now. And I can be fearful that what we're seeing is this Iron Man mentality that he's had, never missing a game, really means that despite being in a 29-year-old NBA body, he's more or less declining now, and he's 36, 37 in NBA years. That's my biggest fear. That's like the worst case scenario. But I don't have a good explanation of what is happening out there because I don't think Atlanta is necessarily scheming him away.
Right. I think so. A big thing is at closer towards the beginning, first half of the season, they were using him almost like a de facto point guard, and the ball was in his hands, which is something he did get used to in Brooklyn. They kind of shifted away from that as the season went on, which I don't necessarily think that was the wrong call. They've clearly put an emphasis, as we saw in Game 4, of trying to get Towns now, or I should say in that game, of getting Towns more touches and running the offense through him, which I don't know if that necessarily benefits Mikal Bridges. It's also not going to benefit him necessarily as much if you're spamming a Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson two-man game. I think for the most part this series, he's done, especially like the first 2.5, 3 games, he's done a fine job defensively. He's played a lot of time on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But to your point, the vanishing acts on offense, I know you mentioned that the mid-range pull-up is always going to be there. That's kind of part of the problem, is like that you will live with Mikal Bridges shooting 55% from mid-range because he's just never going to get to the basket. He continues to shy away from contact, and bails out defenses, whether he's on his drives or in transition. And even if you wanted to use him more creatively off the ball, or like look at OG Anunoby as he's getting his shots. I'm not asking Mikal Bridges to be as strong as OG Anunoby. Mikal Bridges has, I would say, more ball skills than OG Anunoby, but he can't. His drives just don't get to the basket the way that OG's does. OG's not afraid of that contact in transition when he gets going downhill.
He's 240 pounds of raw muscle, though.
I'm not, but OG tries to body guys out of the way. Where Mikal Bridges, it's not even just going through traffic. It's one person. Just kind of like Grant says Mikal Bridges' superpower is forever fading away. And it's just, it's funny, but it's also true. And so I think then when you go through these ruts where maybe if you have to guard more screens, that's not supposed to be, that's not his MO. Or if you're not shooting as well from spots on the floor when you're open. So now, whether it's you're not playing well and it's infecting other areas of your game, or I would argue the margin for error with him is so slim because he's already an imperfect player who the Knicks have kind of de-emphasized to me a little bit on offense, it makes everything look way worse. And the one thing I'll say, he's been bad this series. I think it's fair from the Knicks' perspective when you're evaluating the Knicks to say, they gave up controlled 5 first-round picks to get this guy. But you also we need to abandon the idea of Mikal Bridges being a 5 first-round pick asset. You need to view him through the prism of he's supposed to be like your 3rd or 4th option on offense and impacting you that way. Is he doing that? Now, a lot of the times the answer is yes, but because of what the Knicks gave up to get him, it's not good enough. This series, the answer has been a resounding no. And I think that's probably the bigger issue, is that you can't say he's been their 3rd, their 4th best offensive player. You could make the case that he has been their worst offensive player. To stick with the Knicks, though, I also have Mike Brown on this list. Has been kind of disappointing to me. I'm someone, just because I'm not Caitlin Cooper or Samson Folk. I just don't understand the X's and O's in real time like they do. I don't try to lobby criticisms at coaches in an unhinged way. He's been pretty bad this series. When you're trying out lineups, the Knicks didn't even test in the regular season. His justifications for not playing Mitchell Robinson more are BS in my mind. Some of the reasonings he's given was he doesn't want to play dual big lineups because of the defensive matchups, and that puts Karl Anthony Towns on Jalen Johnson in certain instances. That's probably actually good for Karl Anthony Towns. Anecdotally, he's a better defender, one, when he doesn't have to play the traditional big man role and clean up things on the back line, but two, when you force him to play aggressively or put him in tough situations, do I think it's always going to go? Well, no, but you activate him and force an engagement level. It's kind of like on offense, where if you play Karl Anthony Towns without Jalen Brunson, you force him to be aggressive because he has no other choice. Another reasoning, of course, is the hack-a-mitch. Make the Hawks get in foul trouble then. I know Quinn Snyder's tried it a little bit in this series. Then let them, give them that pressure point and see how they react to it. Just beyond that, I haven't loved, the Towns stuff, where I think they did a lot of things right in Game 4, hit a lot of the right notes. But the thing with Karl Anthony Towns is he's always been someone whose offense is largely predicated on getting him the ball, which the Knicks, whether it's Jalen Brunson, whether it's Mike Brown, it just doesn't happen consistently enough. And I'm not trying to absolve Towns of all blame. And when he deflects and says the opportunity to shoot really wasn't there, yes, you can point to possessions where maybe he swung the ball and could have taken a 3, or he wasn't fighting hard enough in the post. But Karl Anthony Towns is someone that you need to design touches for. Is that ideal? Probably not, but that is the player, one, that the Knicks traded for, and two, that you agreed to coach. You weren't with the Knicks when they didn't have Karl Anthony Towns. So I thought he's coached a pretty bad series, even starting from trying. I appreciated the spirit at the beginning of the series of trying to get away with playing Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Robinson almost exclusively together and navigating stretches at the second and fourth quarters without them. They ended up winning those minutes in Game 1, got torched in those minutes in Game 2. Your team is not built. You have two your two best offensive players, your team is not built to play without both of them. And I can even argue that the Towns without Brunson minutes are by and large good. But one of our biggest issues with the Knicks collectively is, do they have enough secondary creation? Because Karl-Anthony Towns isn't necessarily the answer to that on a consistent basis. So like truncating their minutes together, even if the results were okay at points, never made a ton of sense. And even just small things like, if you want to give dual bigs a real chance, I would argue don't have Josh Hart on the floor in those minutes, because Mike Brown also pointed to the data on those lineups. One, the data is like the sample size isn't large enough at this point to just say, well, let's abandon ship here. And two, if you're putting Mitch and Josh Hart, I know some of those numbers have always been good, but if you're doing Mitch, Josh Hart, and Karl-Anthony Towns, so you're going dual big plus Josh Hart, you're probably not setting yourself up for success. So I think you could point to other things like Jalen Brunson's efficiency, the inconsistency of Cat, but I think Bridges and Brown have been the two biggest disappointments for New York in this series.
All right, so who do you got?
Let's go. I mean, we have to talk about the Rockets. No, I understand that they don't have Fred VanVleet. I understand that they don't have Steven Adams, and I understand that they mostly have not had Kevin Durant.
Right.
Falling down 3-0 to the Lakers, and then cool, they decisive victory in Game 4. You've delayed the inevitable at this point of just prolonging your season. I don't know what to do with this team. I think you could, similar to the Nuggets, you could maybe talk me into anything this offseason. If they didn't just extend Ime Udoka, I wonder if he would be on the hot seat. Where do you want to coach this team with some of the things that you've, like, after the Game 3 was an atrocity when they have the lead. And what was it? They were up 6 with how many? Was it like 20 seconds left or whatever it was? And you're like, just the decision making was just so absent-minded during that mini stretch. But Ime Udoka is basically throwing his team under the bus after that, which, whether or not it was their fault, like the player's fault, I just didn't feel like that was the time for him to go full deflection. They were another team. We talked about this with the Pistons, where you knew they needed offensive help by the trade deadline. You knew that Steven Adams was injured. You knew you weren't going to have Fred VanVleet probably all year. You knew that Reed Shepherd wasn't either, one, coming along as you wanted, and or two, doesn't have the trust of Ime Udoka on a consistent basis anyway. And you elected to do basically nothing. So I like Alperen Şengün, yes, could certainly be better in this series. But I don't like to be so reliant on Kevin Durant at his age. Like you're screwed at this point. That's not even an indictment of Kevin Durant. He's not supposed to be your. If you want him to be your primary scorer, sure. He can't be the one that's like mostly like the best one equipped to set up shots for everybody else. And if you're saying that's supposed to be Alperen Şengün's role, I don't think he's progressed enough as a scorer to be billed as that. And then we know the limitations that Amen Thompson has offensively. The Rockets are just, and like even Jabari Smith Jr. has played a little bit better on offense, but his shot selection has been by and large pretty bad. I know that's part of the experience, but they need, if their offseason begins within the next few days, I don't know how you talk yourself out of saying they need to go get a primary offensive option this summer.
Which they did last year, but he was older, and yeah. It's the crux of the issue here, and you alluded to it. Şengün and Amen Thompson. I think we just need, and this is going to sound very like overall-ish, but there's just no serious NBA team who can justify having two somewhat high usage players who can't space the floor. If we're just talking offense, because we can talk defense later. Offensively speaking, you're just coming in at such a major disadvantage. And Thompson, who maybe you can, I might be too optimistic here. You can rail me in if I am. His free throw shooting this year at least lends me the idea that perhaps there's a shot in hell that he can get to becoming a sound three-point shooter eventually. Because it does seem like everything has tightened up on his release. But so far the results are just not there. And if that is going to be a theme that continues, and you're also seeing Şengün just not being that floor spacer, again, then that's two players you just don't have to take that much defensive attention to, and you can key that attention onto someone else. Like their high usage guy, like Şengün has taken 78 shots this series. You're probably mostly just concerning yourself. Sorry, that was difficult to say. around the basket and from within like 10 to 12 feet. All right, you can game plan around that. And Thompson, roughly the same extent, you can so too, even if he is far more efficient, far more athletic, and far more unpredictable because he's just so creative when he gets up in the air. It's just not, it doesn't happen with such high regularity that it makes or breaks your game plan if he makes a couple of highlight plays. That just doesn't deteriorate your game plan whatsoever. I think you hit it on the head here. You need someone who just knows how to get shit done with the ball in their hands, making decisions and getting everyone aligned. Someone who is the primary key to everything. And they tried with KD. KD is older. He's also not, a primary play initiator, I would argue. Can we say that they need a de facto point guard? I don't know, but definitely someone who can handle the ball at a far higher extent. It at least shouldn't go through the hands of Şengün as much as it is.
And I don't, you can't just sit here and say, well, they'll get Steven Adams back and Fred VanVleet next year and maybe add some shooting and they'll be fine, right? Because one, Fred VanVleet getting older as well, coming off an ACL injury, he was a breath of fresh air for them last season, but that's not someone that you want to be your primary floor general at this point either. I believed it's Reed Sheppard. I've definitely come off of that a little bit. The highs and lows for him are just insane. I don't know if I would believe that he hasn't been put in the best opportunity to succeed, but now you followed a more urgent timeline, and if he's not showing it now to where he's this defensive liability, the shot making's all over the place. At the same time, I'd argue with this current iteration of the Rockets, he's almost indispensable because you need someone who can put pressure on the defense with his movement both on and off the ball, other than a Kevin Durant who's not going to put pressure on, one, isn't playing, and two, isn't going to put pressure on his defense really, like with his movement off the ball, like the gravity there, sure. And they're going to be linked to Giannis this summer. I don't necessarily understand that. I guess if it was a matter of Şengün as the primary outgoing asset, that might intrigue me. But if it's Amen Thompson and picks, I don't know what you're really doing for your team at that point. Feels like you're truncating your window while increasing the risk factor there. Giannis is fantastic. I just don't think he's what this team needs.
Yeah,
they need to be they need to be a LaMelo Ball, Donovan Mitchell team. Can you get Kawhi Leonard? Honestly, I think it was Michael Pina brought this up for The Ringer, proposed Alperen Şengün for Kawhi Leonard as sort of just the baseline of an offer. You'd have to add in more money there. And the extent to which I didn't hate that for the Rockets when Şengün is so much younger and was on a deal that I said was like, that was great work by the Rockets. They negotiated, they got him for noticeably less than the max. I think that might be me being a captor of the moment, just because of how unwatchable the Rockets have been at points in a series. What's also not helping them, by the way, is the Lakers missing their two most important offensive players in theory, and then you're still just getting like kind of, screwed. That hasn't helped, and maybe it's exacerbated it a little bit. But this is not a team that can just go into the offseason and think, well, we'll add some, shooting on the margins and be fine. No, I think you need a new primary ball handler here. And I don't know who's going to come available. That's the answer. I would argue as of right now that Donovan Mitchell and LaMelo Ball, the two names I threw out there, are not available. You at least need to go out. I don't think this fixes enough, but you need to be a Cam Spencer team. Or just someone like you need to bring someone in here who could even do that, but I just don't think that's going to be a large enough type of improvement.
I think you mentioned the wrong Clipper. I know it's Michael Pina, but and he's probably not available either to add to your list, but Darius Garland on this team. High volume 3-point shooter, primary ball handler, has proven himself as a wonderfully underrated play initiator as well. Can play both on and off the ball, so that means that does allow you to throw the ball into Şengün, move, pivot while you're off ball, and then the kick out. Like, that is, to me, Garland is a guy who just, so many teams, if he's not a lock in LA, should be on the hunt for him specifically. He's the guy.
I got a couple more names for you too that might have pathways to becoming what who would actually be really good for this team. I just don't think these two squads would engage in sign and trade talk. Austin Reeves, I think would be really good for Houston.
Yeah.
Two names I have. Well, one of them I think probably won't be untouchable, but Kyrie Irving would be an interesting flyer here. I don't know what the Mavs want for him. The other one,
mean, yeah, theoretically, like we don't even know how he looks anymore at this
right?
stage.
That's a caveat. But if you don't have to, I guess if you don't want to mortgage a ton of your future and you're just like if you're getting off, are you getting off the Capella and/or Dorian Finney-Smith deals as part of that package?
So Durant and Kyrie back together again. Are they going to force the Rockets to sign DeAndre Jordan?
No, but they'll force them to reacquire James Harden and reunite that way.
Yeah, all right.
The other name, I don't think he'll become available, but just the way that things are going in Denver, Jamal Murray would be a really good fit for this team.
Yes. Murray would be a great fit for a lot of teams. Yeah. I agree with that.
Do you think they're going to ultimately be that aggressive over the offseason?
Unclear. Like I think they have some decisions to make already with Tari Eason, for example, figuring out what that situation is all about. Then also, there's kind of the Kevin Durant way of things as well. Like, what is he going to do? Is he going to look at this thing and go, you know what, guys, it's been nice. I'm a roll out. I don't know. Like, we just don't know what the plan is there. Are they going to use him as some sort of, like, he has a high salary. That could be a good trade piece.
Can you trade Kevin Durant and get better? Do you think, vibes wise? Sure.
I think you can perhaps get deeper and solve some issues. At least.
That's
what they want. It's
yeah.
I mean, it's depressing. But it's not a great situation. I was not a Rockets guy for a long time this season. I thought they were getting overrated largely, and like what I do love, I love the collective talent level. I just think it's such a bad mesh of talent.
I'm trying to think of what would be like who would give up stuff for Kevin Durant right now? Like the Bucks are desperate enough. Would they do Ryan Rollins and picks and salary for Kevin Durant?
Probably. Well, I mean,
does that make you better as the Rockets?
Going all in on Trae Young and Anthony Davis. Would they not make a play?
I would assume they wouldn't, unless KD wanted to go to the DC area, like he flirted with
from there
10 years. I know, I'm saying, but that was like 10 years ago. Toronto, Kevin Durant in lieu of Brandon Ingram would be super interesting. We have
you in lieu of Brandon Ingram would be interesting right now.
Wow, rude. Super chat from Chuckin Jinvin TV. Lakers in 5. Yeah, honestly, I kind of thought it was going to be Lakers in 4 after I watched Game 3. And then, of course, we saw Kevin Durant was out for Game 4. I assumed they were going to wrap it up, but yeah. Maybe if Dylan Brooks and maybe even Jalen Green becomes available, Andrew Willett says in the chat, that would be, let's reacquire those guys. I picked the Rockets, so who is your next pick?
I actually have a question before we go to the next pick. Like, can we even be allowed to be disappointed in Brandon Ingram right now? Or was this just expected?
I think we could be disappointed in it. We could throw him up here for a second because he was one of my list of disappointments to where just I did find it funny. What was the quote he had? We can't win with me taking 9 shots. The first game the Raptors won in the series was with him taking 9 shots. I think in theory, it's great that Scotty Barnes, Collin Murray-Boyles, and RJ Barrett are playing so great. But you, in theory, have Brandon Ingram to, one, take attention away from those guys, which just hasn't really done enough of this series, or 2, to hope that he has a better, or if he's going to take certain shots, like the tough shots against the defense, that they're going to go in at a higher clip. He is now up to like 38+% shooting for the series. I think it's fair to say that he's been a disappointment because when you don't have Emmanuel Quickley for the series, to have so much pressure on that trickle down, look at what you paid him, 3 years and 120. And now you're kind of wondering, he's this imperfect player, but he just does so little of what this Raptors team is doing, needs, or even is doing at a high level right now. Like, he's not putting any type of pressure on Cleveland's defense at the moment.
Right. No, he's not. And the reluctance in the three-point shooting department, look, there was a point in New Orleans where Pelicans fans were saying, oh, this is overstated. He's just taking smarter shots. I'm never backing off of that criticism. This guy is such a potent shooter from outside. Like when gets it going, and he gets it going pretty easily, this dude can absolutely maintain a high level of efficiency on high volume. Last year in New Orleans, he only played 18 games, but he actually upped his 3-point rate substantially, and he maintained his efficiency. There's absolutely no reason for him to turn down those shots. There's no reason for him to be that reluctant and taking that one goddamn dribble in for the midi pull-up and just take the three, Brandon. And it's a problem that's just been present since, 2021? So 5 years? Like, we have enough data that he's just not going to take the good shots. And still, somehow, here's $40 million a year. Come be our primary engine offensively, at least to a certain extent. At some point, it's shame on me for keep trusting him. Like, he cannot have this type of role moving forward. You can't allow him to be your, tied 1A, 1B offensive unit. You just can't. The 3-point volume is too low. He doesn't draw enough fouls. He's a good but not great passer. There's just a lot of wasted movements with him that bothers me, and we've seen it at full display during these playoffs. So I'm very disappointed, but I'm also not surprised.
Yeah, this level of non-entity feels badly surprising to me, where I'm a little disarmed at how I think the only he could make more shots or just play better. That would be a saving grace. But it made me wonder that if you went into the next series, so you're going up against Detroit in that instance, do you, or I guess Orlando, but because in this series, the value of Brandon Ingram is okay. You've taken Dean Wade out of the equation, maybe, is because he'll be guarding Brandon Ingram, which he hasn't done for the entire series. He's done it a bunch. But if you went up against these other teams that have better perimeter defenders than the Cavs do, because no one expected, they're going to give. Now, if you're going to give Evan Mobley the Brandon Ingram assignment at this point, it might be because you think that it's worth roaming off of Brandon Ingram, which is an indictment of Brandon Ingram. But if you're the Pistons or the Magic, are you dead set on putting your best perimeter guys on Brandon Ingram now? And if the answer is no, then that becomes like sort of a bigger indictment on BI. And YSO_11 says in the chat, I hate him as a lead creator, way too many turnovers. He's better off ball. I agree with the first point, and then I like the latter point. I still feel like is debatable. He might be less detrimental away from the ball. I don't know if he's engaged enough or doing enough of what you want off the ball. Because if you have Brandon Ingram off the ball, haven't you more kneecapped the theory of Brandon Ingram on your team? Because he just doesn't do enough of like the RJ Barrett type stuff away from the ball.
Right. No, I mean, look, theoretically, he should be one of those plug and play guys who can space, be on the ball, be created too. He just doesn't. He just doesn't fit that bill in reality. Like, he's more of a theoretical player than he's a practical one. I frankly, it doesn't really matter. I've reached this point now, Dan, where it doesn't matter to me how you actually utilize him, because eventually he is just going to be a detriment to how you run your offense. I think he can have such positive value in the regular season and help you get to the playoffs, but come playoff time, he is so easily game planned against, and he just leans into it, full charge ahead. He's not worth the trouble to me. So I don't know what the next step here is for Toronto. Like,
I also wonder too. I want to be clear. It's not bad if they win. Andrew says in the chat that's too much money off the ball as well, and that's if you're not the defensive anchor. I think that's a fair point as well.
Yep.
You can't if you win this series or if you somehow get to the conference finals, you can't view unless BI all of a sudden goes off and maybe it turns out, the Cavs are just a uniquely bad matchup for him, which I really just don't think is the case.
No.
You don't want to trick your front office into thinking everything's fine or this is not. Like, you want to go into the offseason searching for that offensive type of an upgrade or a pivot there. Where did you actually want to go? Should we stick with this series?
Okay. Yeah, could. I was actually going to. Yeah. Do you know what? Why not? Let's stick with those. I was going in a different direction, but this is prudent and relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cavs bigs have not been great.
No, they have not. So let's get into it. I think overall, I've been disappointed in Evan Mobley throughout most of the year. I think I expected more. Maybe that's on me. I kind of expected him to grow and be more efficient, be more sharp in his just overall decision process. I don't think he has been. This season, or this series rather, I felt was a perfect opportunity for him to utilize his size advantage because, again, they have wings, but they don't have a shit ton of bigs. Jarrett Allen would often take Jakob Poeltl, and you're kind of left with Scotty Barnes. Barnes is an excellent elite defender, but he's not 6'11" and nimble and has the ability to really contest Mobley on the high post shots. And I just feel like he's been floating in and out of the background constantly. So Jarrett Allen even more so. Very, very sporadic shot making. And when he comes in bunches, he is effectively a guy you have to turn your attention to because he is so athletic. When he goes down the paint, that's usually a dunk. He's so infatuated with that, the long jump and the long stride, and teams have to adjust to it. But when he's standing around just not doing anything, he's taken 25 total shots this series alone. You're giving them an out. You're forcing the offense to come from outside and in. And that means you're basically starting your offense at a place where Scotty Barnes is brilliant. That just seems like a weird strategy to me. So, yes, those two guys, I just need them to do more shit, frankly.
Caitlin Cooper was all over this on Twitter too about the way that the Toronto kind of flipping the matchups to where if you're putting Poeltl on Mobley, you're now putting RJ on Jarrett Allen. One, the Cavs have not found a way to take advantage of that matchup. And then two, what you're also doing is you're compelling the Cavs to use Mobley as the primary screener. And who is James Harden's best pick and roll partner on this team? It's Jarrett Allen. And so you're kind of removing that from your bag. And now you bake in just the number of wide open threes that were being missed by Cleveland in game 4 when they dropped that second game in Toronto. There was just these bigs, and this has been a criticism that everyone's had for so long, whether they're playing dual big, when they're playing one big, it just doesn't feel like they play physical. It doesn't feel like they're playing big. And that's never been more evident than it is in this series, especially if you're looking at the things that CMB, who's not like this gigantic player.
Right.
Scotty Barnes is freaking strong. He's not gigantic. And you're just being bodied by these guys. And I don't know, if you're moving through this series, and even if you win it, you're getting, as the competition is going to get better, you have to now think about, maybe we're going up against an Orlando or Detroit defense. It's not going to get, maybe it gets slightly easier, but it's not going to get much easier when you're looking at the front courts both those teams run out. And so I also think that this is a symptom of the bigs a little bit to me. I don't think we need to have as deep of a rotation as Cleveland is sort of trying to have throughout this series. Could Kenny Atkinson shorten that a little bit more? But is his response to the bigs have been so underwhelming that we're going to work on different lineups. Then there's going to be especially during the staggered, when it's the one big stuff, that you're not going to be as married to short of a rotation. Because if you shorten a rotation, presumably you want more dual big minutes. And I don't know that dual big minutes are the answer for Cleveland in this series at this point.
Has Collin Murray-Boyles been the best big this series? I personally think the answer is an enthusiastically yes, which is...
You think he's been better than Scotty Barnes?
No. Is Barnes a big? I consider him more of a wing.
He's like a combo forward. All right, but fair. But I mean, I think what you could say is the two best bigs in this series are on Toronto at the moment.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, but I was putting Murray-Boyles up against Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, which here's a 20-year-old in his first playoff series, and he's outplaying those guys. That's blatantly ridiculous. He's so good, man.
He might come up in just a minute. So before we move on to surprises, was there another, actually really quick, concern level for the Cavs, though? Because they have other, the way they played in game 4 overall was just majorly disappointing. That was an ugly ass game too. But just between the missed threes, the turnovers, even the body language was just not great.
I'm at a 60% concerned level.
That I don't know. I look at that game and say yeah, I guess you can count on maybe Toronto's offense isn't always going to be nuclear, in terms of efficiency. So the Cavs have a little bit bigger of a margin for error there. But that's another. I think I had Cavs in 5 for this series. That's just another series I was dead wrong about. Yeah. What's the last disappointment you wanted to talk about?
All right, so we may have to go to the Atlanta Knicks series again and talk about Jalen Johnson. Risacher missing in action. I love that one. I feel like that's been a topic for a while. So I was not necessarily expecting this, but I did have this was inkling in the back of my mind when the Hawks entered the postseason. Johnson is a transitional nightmare in the best of sense. He is just he reminds me of Sean Marion back in the Phoenix days. Someone who will just get down the floor in a damn hurry and he'll get shots up and they will be effective. In a playoff context where things are slowed down just a little bit and where the defense allows to set, I did wonder how is he going to apply himself so he can have the same type of efficient output as he did in the regular season. How is he going to reinvent that? So far, he really hasn't. And that's the concern that I have is how is he going to ultimately produce positively in a half-court setting? Because so far, I think he's struggled finding shots. I think he's struggled finding his rhythm. I think he's struggled generally just figuring out stuff in half-court settings to the extent that he wants to. And in turn, that's also led to CJ McCollum being a freaking playoff hero, but that's neither here or there. This is certainly not for this podcast. I'm just kind of curious to see how he's going to adjust. We're 4 games in, so I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt here that because he's still trying to break out, he's still trying to find his role in this league. He needs to come up with a solution, though.
I do, to his credit, he's definitely struggled, but Josh Hart has done a fantastic job defensively on this series. He's also had to see looks against OG Anunoby, which is never a good time either. So that aspect of it, I kind of understand, but we're seeing a lot of the concerns manifest that we had about him as the lead guy on your team in general, is because does he have enough to give you the half court juice, to be if you have to operate from more dead stops, you were probably going to see in the playoffs, or if you're going against offenses who, I guess the Knicks offense has not set the world on fire, but in theory more efficient offenses who then their defense gets a chance to get set. I still think I was lower on him than most, and I just think I was clearly wrong. I still view him as kind of the primary, he is a primary setup guy material, but I do find myself wondering, is there a counter he needs more? Is it to do more in between stuff, or do you need to shift some of the personnel around him if you want him to be more of your league half court creator?
Right. So this is where people are probably going to laugh a little bit at the situation because they did lose Trae Young, who was great at finding guys, right? The court vision is excellent. Now they need someone like him who isn't him. You know what I mean? Not someone who goes in and just occupies the entire offense, but you do need someone who can break down stuff in the half court, who can find him in these pockets as he rolls. You also need him to, I think, you kind of alluded to it, just trying to get into the in-between game. I wouldn't hate seeing him also use inverted screen rolls a little bit more, perhaps use Dyson Daniels as the roller a little bit more, have him come in, see if he can pull up from 15, 16 feet. That'd be nice. I would like to see some level of action be prioritized with Jalen Johnson in mind in the half-court setting, because it does feel like he is, both him and Kuminga, honestly, are far more effective when the ball is just popping and moving and it's quick up and down. I can worry about the sustainability of that as they go further into the playoffs, if they do.
Yeah, I think the in-between stuff, and what was he during the regular season? He was 42% from mid-range. He's been 29%. against the Knicks. I think in the half court, the best option right now for him is to just set like an incredibly high screen to give him that runway to get going downhill. But if you had more of like the in between arsenal, like there might add some unpredictable one that helps you if things do slow down or you're not getting like super high ball screens. But two, it keeps defenses more on tilt if you can make that shot like more frequently on a dime. But this was not, I guess maybe it should have been a defense. In theory, I could see him struggling against more than I had given credit entering the series, but it just makes me wonder, like, if they did make it to later playoff rounds, do we see even more? Does this get exacerbated even more? I did mention, I put Risacher on here too, because we should probably talk more about how the number one overall pick from 2024 is just MIA in this series, right? Like, that's not ideal.
6 minutes? That's great. Yeah, that's what you need out of your top pick, right?
I go back and forth on stuff like this, though, because you could make the same case about Reed Sheppard, who is, in theory, Reed Sheppard's way more important to Houston than Risacher is to Atlanta. And Atlanta, you're in a playoff series, the stakes are higher, you're trying to win. You need to play the guys who are going to help you win most. But then it's, well, if you're not playing him now, like, what is the plan here for moving forward? And I honestly I don't think he's given them, like, when you look at, there were pockets of time in the regular season where he was shooting the ball better, but I don't know that he's done enough for us to sit here. But it's outrageous that he's just not in Atlanta's playoff rotation. The answer is you're 2-2 in a series that I think most people had Knicks in 6 or 5 for. I just don't, I'm sort of at a loss here. Like, what's the level of panic? Like, if you're going like on a scale of 1 to 10, like this is only year 2, but you're MIA in a playoff series as a number one overall pick.
I mean, look, he was the top pick in arguably the worst predicted draft. I think there's a difference between how guys turn out and how guys are projected. And in terms of projections, the 2024 draft might be an all-time worst, just in terms of how we guess guys would be. So in that vein, I have a hard time, panicking about this. It's still not great. I expected better than this. Like, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's not like it's Victor Wembanyama coming in there. It's not like it's Cooper Flag. It's not like it's AJ Dubonsa coming in. I'm already presuming he's going to be great. So, like, the panic level isn't insanely high, but 6 minutes in 2 games, and like you said, not even being given a chance to kind of develop within this framework, because you're playing Dyson Daniels 30 plus minutes a game. 2 years in age difference there? Like, no, you got to get Zaccharie Risacher on the floor. But frankly, I think they're done. I don't think he's a Hawk after this season.
I would be curious that would be an interesting flyer for a team to take, but I'd be curious what his value is.
Right. I think I look, if they can get
like you're behind Corey Kispert in your team's playoff rotation right now. The optics are not great.
No, but like some young team is probably going to say, screw that. We don't care. He's a long-term project. Like, we'll give it a protected first or something, because again, his physical profile is interesting. 6'9", long arms, can shoot, like is somewhat athletic. It's not like he projects awfully. He's just had such a rough start to his career, and in large part because he was picked too high. But that doesn't mean there isn't potential there. We shouldn't keep, evaluating guys entirely off of where they were drafted. Like, a guy who can pick number 1 and disappoint you because of draft position doesn't necessarily he isn't bound to be a low potential player as is. So I still think there's something there, but this, like you, this is pretty discouraging. Yes.
Andrew Willett says in the chat, that would be a pretty low sell. At the time, I thought Sarr was the best prospect, so you can imagine him next to Onyeka in the front line might work great with Jalen Johnson. Playing those 3 together would be monstrous. I don't know what the offense would look like in that case, but yeah, do you give up a lot? Would you give up a lottery pick in this year's draft for Zaccharie Risacher?
Lottery,
not
no.
top 4, but like you have the 14th pick, you wouldn't trade it for Risacher.
No.
I was asking.
Yeah, you're just asking questions. So, like 20, 25, like I can probably get there. 20?
Man. Wow. That's not great. But you know what is great, Mort? It's optimism time. Would you like to take me to your first biggest surprise of the playoffs?
Look, Lakers, man, come on. I can often be
the
tired.
ever undercovered Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes, that's what I was getting to. Because here's the thing: as a media member, I hate talking about the Lakers all the time. I hate listening about the Lakers all the time because it's so often driven by the smallest of things, like look, LeBron passed the ball to his son. Let's have 1,400 articles about it. I'm so tired. This is a real story for once, Dan. This is a real, genuine, feel-good story about the Lakers. I love it. Like, frankly, now we finally have something to talk about with the Lakers. Up 3-1, they just look so much better. Like you said it in the description of the thing here, like Luke Kennard, Marcus Smart, like the role players are stepping up. They're hitting shots. They're playing at a brand of basketball where the veteran leadership is so present. They're sharing the ball. There's cohesion. The body language is great. Great job by JJ Redick. Great job from LeBron James to also concede that, hey, I don't have to go OG LeBron on this one. I can actually scale a little back. I can make sure that these guys who are hot, they actually get the rock. Marcus Smart has looked like the DPOY player he once was. Everything is just coming up Millhouse for this team right now. And it's 4 games, so I'm not going to sit here and anticipate it continuing. But I am going to say, based on the 4 games that we've seen, this has been a very, very pleasant surprise. Kudos to the Lakers for just figuring stuff out in the face of obscene obscurity.
Yeah, the stuff that stood out the most, I mean, I understand that maybe they don't have other options, but it's still jarring to see Luke Kennard get double teamed. Like the fact that that's just the player he's turned into. You have all these other fan bases who've been begging him to be more aggressive offensively for years. And this is the series. He just comes out and by force, you look at just the touch numbers, the usage numbers are just skyrocketing from where they were. Again, because he has no choice, but 9 of 20 on threes for the series. Honestly, for Luke Kennard, 17 free throws in 4 games. Mm-hmm. That's quite a bit. You mentioned the Marcus Smart stuff. He's been fantastic on defense. He's shooting 8 of 18 from 3, 44+%. But the fact that he's just, yes, you're going up against what feels like an impotent Rockets team, but like he's also guarding all of the real guys. He saw time on Kevin Durant in the 1 game that he played. He's guarded Amen Thompson. He's guarded Reed Shepherd. He's been on Jabari Smith Jr. He's been on Alperen Şengün, even for beats. He has been an absolute monster. And I know that he had shown some signs like later on in the year, but is there a case to be made that he's the single most surprising player of the playoffs so far is the Marcus Smart experience? There's got to be a pleasant surprise because I could even talk myself. I want to spoil everyone we're going to talk about. I could talk myself into us. Had you put him in a playoff team at the beginning of the season, I could have talked myself into, Ayo is going to have some moments, but I was just operating under the assumption that Marcus Smart was kind of not cooked, but cooked adjacent.
Cooked, adjacently cooked, yes. Okay, so if we're only basing it off these 4 games and we're just completely avoiding the fact that this feels like inevitability that he's going to come crashing down to earth, because that is something I do feel. Yes, as of what he's doing right now, like just the line. I raw lines are shit, but I'm just going to read it anyway because this is obscene compared to the expectation level of Marcus Smart. 17.5 points per game, 7.5 assists, 3.5 steals, 2 blocks, 44.4% from 3. And oh, by the way, he's getting to the fucking free throw line 7 times per game. Like, I'm sorry. That's yes. If we're
why are you sorry?
No, I'm just saying I'm isolating because I'm expecting this to drop significantly. But if in the course of 4 games, if we're just isolating to that, I think your statement there is one I would agree with in terms of just biggest surprise. And like Ayo is up there, and I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about him later on. But I think your point about we all expected Marcus to be somewhat cooked by now, and now he's found this resurgence, that matters. That just bakes it into it.
So what's the micro surprise. What's the bigger micro surprise? Luke Kennard getting double teamed like fairly consistently in the playoffs, or seeing a lot of bodies from him, or Marcus Smart having a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio.
Right. That has to be it. Can we also just attach some words to Rui Hachimura? Like,
one of the most underrated shooters in the game. It's only because he plays with LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves. Doesn't matter that it's scaled to so many different LA teams. It wasn't always like this in Washington. I've said a few times, I think I'm wrong all the time, but I don't think Rui receives enough credit for just turning into this hyper efficient complementary offensive player.
Same. I think he's reaching a level where he is universally underrated to a certain extent, and he's an unrestricted free agent this year, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what type of money he's going to get, because he can be spotty defensively for sure. In this series, you've been able, like, if you can put him on an Amen Thompson type, or you can put him on a Jabari Smith Jr. even. Okay, sure, but he can be exposed in other situations. Like, other teams, I think, will go after him. Although you could point to the Lakers lineups right now, they're going to be tempted to go after so many guys. It's just not working as often as you would expect. Do you think he gets more than mid-level money?
This is the NBA in an era where free agency has more or less died. So I think ultimately some team is going to think about giving him more. But with the aprons and stuff, I have to assume teams are going to try to restrain themselves. So I do think in the full facsimile, like the Nickeil Alexander Walker special, as I'm about to call it, that seems like the most realistic.
The 15 mil. I think if he stays with the Lakers, he has a chance of getting more, because maybe they'll pay a premium to have him on a shorter deal if they're still trying to remain flexible for 2027.
Like 472 or something like that.
By the way, I don't want to get too big picture because the playoffs aren't over for them yet, but they are. I assume they're going to be a sacrificial lamb for like the next round, but against the Thunder. Sorry, I'm stumbling there. But does the way that this has worked out change their offseason calculus at all with LeBron? Or do you think that this doesn't really change anything about the Lakers' approach to him? Because I think a lot of people assumed that this would be more of a collaborative decision, where if maybe the Lakers want him back, maybe LeBron wants to come back. But now it feels like, as LeBron, after adjusting to Luka and Reeves and then proving that he could still, like, he's scaled back at times here too. Maybe sometimes, and if you could say game 4, to the Lakers' detriment. But if you're the Lakers, are you now more interested in retaining LeBron because this happened? Or are you still kind of following the script that we thought they were following all along?
Oh, following the script. This doesn't change anything. This is a 41-year-old man.
Who's still really good.
Still really good. Still 41.
Hater, ageist. My surprise, the Orlando Magic just being frisky. I think, not to undermine what they've done, but if you had to pick kind of we maybe didn't talk about this enough when they had lost their first play-in game, but maybe they were tanking that game to get a matchup against the Pistons, whose offense they don't have to worry about detonating all over them in the same way as a Boston team. Like, these are just, when you look at the juxtaposition from Detroit to Boston, imagining Orlando, they could still be a quality defense against Boston, but just the 3-point variance. Do you start every game off minus 24 in the 3-point department if you're playing Boston? So they have been Paolo Banchero trying to get to the basket more, still not hyper efficient. We all know that, but him trying to get to the basket more. We mentioned when we were talking about disappointments, the job that they have done defensively against Jalen Duren, and just completely not making him uncomfortable, but at times removing him from the offensive game plan, forcing JB Bickerstaff to turn to places in his rotation that he probably wasn't prepared to go there. You're going to have Desmond Bane shooting 42% on threes in this series. Paolo Banchero even being 4 of 11 from 3, 36%. Like that's been big. You mentioned Wendell Carter Jr. earlier in the podcast. He's been fantastic defensively for them. Less Anthony Black than I expected to see, but I guess when you have healthy Jalen Suggs, who remains just a defensive psychopath, I guess that's just what's going to happen. I still have questions about this offense, and so if you put the Magic in a series against just teams that have more offensive potency, what is that going to wind up looking like? But we just anecdotally, we had the Orlando Magic dead in the water. Everyone thought it was just curtains on their season after watching them in the play-in. Even after killing the Hornets. They've come back and they've just responded. And like, it was game 2 where they looked awful. And I kept calling it game 3 over the weekend. I don't know why. Like Paolo Banchero, the energy level there wasn't great. Franz Wagner didn't look great. I kind of thought, all right, that's the Magic we know and loathe. And then they come back and you pick up that victory in game 3 against Detroit. I think they're built to win ugly better than other teams are built to win ugly is my big takeaway from this.
That is a good takeaway. It's dreadfully obvious, but it's a good takeaway. Yes, that is how they play basketball and have played basketball all year long. I think ultimately their depth is a major advantage in this series. Like you brought up Anthony Black. We talked about him very briefly beforehand. Such a monster defensively. Like what he's doing in basically one half of basketball right now off the bench is insane. I even think like a guy like Jamal Cain has given them good minutes defensively coming off the bench, like good energy and a physical presence. There's a lot to take away from this. Paolo, I still think for once, like I'm
here we
after
go.
Paolo. No. I'm gonna surprise you. I'm going to protect him a little bit here. Because his efficiency this series has not been great. However, I do not comprehend why Jamal Mosley keep doing this thing where he forces the ball basically outside to Paolo and makes him dribble the ball up the court and initiate the offense 35 feet from the basket. I don't think this helps Paolo get clean looks. I don't think this helps him get into the teeth of the defense any better because the argument probably is for Mosley's behalf, it turns his jets on so he can go downhill. Well, you're going up against Detroit, one of the league's best defenses. That's probably a really bad play. Like, I just don't think they have been creative in setting him up. So for once, I'm actually not going to point at Paolo Banchero and say, well, this is bad. Now, do I think that he's had some shots this series that he shouldn't have taken? Absolutely. But name me a player who you can't say that about. I just don't like the way they're using him. I don't like the way that they are consistently forcing him to do so much on-ball stuff. Like, run it through Suggs, run it through Black, run it through Carter. Just don't necessarily go through Banchero, honestly, but go run it through Bane. Bane is a pretty good passer too. Like, just don't give him this responsibility. It's preposterously stupid.
Yeah, I think. Do you believe they have the personnel to consistently do that?
I think it's a better option. No, I mean, to answer your question, no, but I don't think the alternative of giving him the ball is the better one. So I would rather shoehorn like the Suggs, Bane, Black, Wagner playmaking into it than I would want Paolo to have to settle for a bunch of shots. Like, I remember calling game 1 for HBO, and we were all sitting there and we're basically clapping in our hands because he was consistently getting shots around the rim and he was consistently getting to that spot. And he needs to be a guy who starts from the inside and out. Like, when he falls in love with the midi pull-up, you as a coaching staff has to rein him in and make sure he's more on the inside functioning of it all. But they don't. They actually start him out oftentimes as being an exterior threat, which he just shouldn't be. So I can't wait for the Magic to actually get a good coach in there after this season. By the way, Billy Donovan, hello, right there for the taking. Just give him a call.
Do you is Billy Donovan a creative enough offensive coach?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely. Look at the shit platter of players he had in Chicago, and he gave them twice. He gave them league's best shot profile, and like the expected field goal percentage was like far better. Like, Billy Donovan, in my opinion, is a really good coach, and given this level of roster instead of the poo-poo platter that was Chicago, I think he could elevate them substantially.
Which, probably fair. I think part of the appeal, and I do think they've gotten better at running different things for Apollo this year, like as it went on overall, but part of his superpower and the appeal is that he doesn't receive enough credit for is he will just draw a ton of fouls, even in the playoffs. And the fact that his shooting foul rate, is identical right now compared to where it was in the regular season. I know you're playing a Pistons team that is more apt to foul than other teams as well, but that's kind of a superpower. And it's part of why he's been like, he's had tantalizing playoff series performances before. Orlando hasn't won them, but I really don't know what the next, I know you're talking about it needs a different coach. I feel like there needs to be different personnel on the team too if we're going to see a noticeably more efficient version of Paolo at some point soon. Maybe I'm wrong there, as someone who considers himself a Paolo optimist, but I don't think I don't know that a new coach comes in here and Paolo Banchero just suddenly gets more efficient. There might be more creative ways that they get him the ball, but I'd be curious to see if he would be a noticeably more efficient player without changing some of the personnel.
Yeah, I just think he is owed that. Like, I'm not a Paolo Banchero believer, but he is owed a chance to see what he can do under a different head coach. I mean, and a different coaching staff altogether. Like, that is the least you can do before you make a call on his future.
It's your pick. Next surprise.
Is it my? I thought it was yours.
You picked the Lakers, I picked the Magic, and now it's your turn.
There we go. I was going to talk about the Magic anyway. Dylan Harper. Can I just?
No, I can't talk about him. Sorry, not allowed.
Damn it. Look, this dude, and no Wemby, out with a concussion protocol thing here, and comes off the bench, and he just dictates stuff. Primary playmaker. Gets into the action, gets into the paint, converts regularly, is such a highly specific playmaker, and I mean that in the best of ways. Like, he sees angles that I don't think a lot of rookies do. I think he is so preposterously underrated generally. You know this because I speak about him quite a bit. The offensive efficiency has surprised me. He was starting to get so much better in that department after the All-Star break, but I did think it would diminish in the playoffs at least because again, sessions become a little bit more intensive and whatnot. He's just kind of kept going with this mindset of his. It's like, yeah, I don't care if I'm a rookie. I don't care if I'm in the playoffs for the first time. I don't care if the burden of responsibility of scoring the basketball because Wemby is out falls on my shoulders. I'll deliver. His patience as a rookie is ridiculous. And we're seeing it time and time again. Like, he had a stinker here in game 4. Like, that wasn't great. But just the fact that he could step up in such a crucial game 3 and take the road win, man, I don't have enough superlatives to describe him. And if this is what we're looking at over the next couple of years, like in terms of expecting his further development, good Lord, sir.
I had called him when we were doing our week 1 takeaways. I think he's the I think he's the most important non-Wemby on the Spurs long term, which basically means that he has usurped Steph Castle, which, by the way, you talk about another surprise. I would have written off. I know Steph Castle shot the ball better, like over the second half of the year. Him taking over 5 3-point attempts per game in this series and actually knocking them down, that's been a pleasant surprise for me as well. But to your point about Dylan Harper, I think what really stands out to me, one, first, he's way better defensively than I'm used to seeing from rookie guards who are supposed to be these offensive engines too. So there's that element that's disarming. The other thing with him, though, is if you're looking for someone who feels like they could score independent of getting the lift from Wemby's gravity, or when we talk about all these Spurs players going downhill, who already, in my mind, has the most expansive offensive arsenals, if you were to rank them, it's probably supposed to be De'Aaron Fox at number 1. And it feels like Dylan Harper's already there when you look at his finishing, plus the mid-range, plus being able to shoot. You probably could have made a case, but at the beginning of the year, probably should have went Fox, Vassell, then maybe you still would have put Harper in front of Castle because just as like the in-between type of stuff and the counters there. Dylan Harper might rank number 1 on that ladder already, which is just huge because you're going to want to get to a point, and we saw it in Game 3, if we're looking for a long-term solution to how do the Spurs figure out a way to dominate offensively when during the 10 to 15 minutes a game, 10 to 20 minutes a game, Victor Wembanyama doesn't play on average. Dylan Harper just looks like the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe immediately.
I'm right here.
Right here.
I have a question for you.
Nope.
Because this is going to be relevant for the offseason. Like, does the evolution of Dylan Harper kind of force the Spurs into potentially considering pivoting off Vassell to give him more minutes and give him that role?
I would rather see them go with more basically Steph Castle at the 4 alignments and just play a bunch of guards together. I think the player 2 move, and I don't know that his stock is high enough. I do believe that he did a good job of adjusting and being able to let Steph Castle and even Dylan Harper and other players have the ball in their hands. But the De'Aaron Fox contract, I don't know how that's going to be viewed around the league. I think what you're waiting on as the Spurs is if you believe there's a next acquisition, you sit on that to when it's De'Aaron Fox plus assets, and that's how we're making the money work. Right. I think Vassell has become too valuable just as the way he fits alongside everyone. The defense he's played this year, the plug and playness on the offensive end. I guess if push comes to shove, but don't you think, what needs to happen for you to urgently think the Spurs have to go make a huge swing on the trade market? Because aren't they a team where, assuming they beat the Blazers, even if they lose to the Nuggets or the Wolves, I guess that would be considered. If they lose to the Wolves without Dante DiVincenzo and Anthony Edwards, that'd be a disappointment. But aren't they sort of the quintessential at this? No, we need to let this marinate team, and then we'll revisit this in the 2027 offseason, or no?
Well, yes or no, because you can make an addition that
those are the 2 answers, by the way.
Right. No, but then frankly, I think there is one move. I think they need to shore up their wing. I do think they need a big
for
wing.
Sure.
And is that you can still let the current iteration of the Spurs marinate while you still go out and find that wing, I think. You still have some contracts that are fairly movable where you can.
They don't have a single. If De'Aaron Fox is your worst contract on the books, you're probably in pretty good shape.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. You have movable contracts, right? And you need someone else because right now their biggest wing is Julian Champagnie, who, don't get me wrong, good player, but still somewhat pigeonholed into this 3-and-D vacuum. Got better on the glass this year. That was a great shout for him, but I think they need someone else. They need something more. You and I have bandied about Trey Murphy. They need someone to come in there, be more of a floor spacer who can play off of Wemby, off of Fox, off of Castle, off of Harper, right? So I don't think they're done. I don't think they need to wait a year to do it. I think they should do it this summer, even if they win the fucking championship, frankly. Just do it. I don't think there's any reason not to.
I guess I just don't know how. If it's the right player, I suppose anything is on the table. I would agree. Coming into the playoffs, I said you have Wemby, so there's always going to be the inherent urgency where if the playoffs don't end how you want, I guess I don't know. I'm way too Fluffhead 23 says Spurs need a power forward more than a wing. I think power forward and wings are interchangeable to me at this point.
Same.
It's if you want unless you want a 4 who could scale up to a 5 instead of a 3. I'm trying to think of what would be good. Larry Markkinen is 2. He could scale down to the 3. If you want Collin Murray-Boyles, for instance, he's not.
I love that. I actually wrote an article before the draft saying that is a guy who the Spurs should trade further into the draft to get. I would love him on the Spurs specifically because I thought he would just be perfect.
I think the pushback, if you could Carter Bryant just be the answer if he starts hitting threes? He's not going to scale up to the 5, although we've seen it.
That's the thing, right? He's not. He's definitely a wing, and he's not. He's 6'6". Is he a big wing? I would call him a shooting guard size. If you go through the old theoretical how tall is a shooting guard? I think they need to. I'm going to be very specific with you right now. They need this 6'9" guy, someone who can play at the 3, who can scale up to the 4, who can have the ball in his hands a little bit, who can shoot off the catch.
Trey Murphy.
Yeah. Oh, that he. Yeah, it might be Trey Murphy I'm referring to. Yes.
I think that's the ideal archetype for them. I've always been Devin Vassell pilled, so I'm the best.
I love Devin Vassell. I think his production has scaled down a fair bit.
You are right. You're objectively right. If Fox, Castle, and Harper aren't going anywhere, and 2 of those guys definitely should not, then yes, like that's what it is. I guess I wonder if my urgency level, because there's a chance to me that the Spurs, as currently constituted, could just wind up winning the title next year. They just needed to go through and Dylan Harper needs to get 10 to 15% better. Ditto for Steph Castle. We see some improvement from Carter Bryant. They make other moves in the draft or maybe a mid-level signing. I might be there with the Spurs in a way. You, again, to your credit, you were ahead of the Spurs, more so than most people this year. But coming in, I was, if you lose, you still, like before the conference finals, you still have Wemby, and the context of how they could lose in the next round. They might not. But if you go into the conference finals and just lose to Oklahoma City, I don't know if the response needs to be, let's attach picks to Devin Vassell and just see who we could get. But to your point again, if it's the right player, I think the Spurs are good enough to maybe consider anything, which is meant as a compliment there.
Yes.
Surprise my pick. I'm going to pick a really big name here. The rise of Jordan Clarkson, Mort. Anyone who was paying attention to the Knicks, like to close the year, Jordan Clarkson re-entered the rotation as unrecognizable. Someone who was putting pressure on the basket, defending, offensive rebounding. He earned himself a spot, Mike Brown came out and said before the playoffs, in the Knicks' playoff rotation. I did not, Mort, have him usurping Mitchell Robinson, Landry Shamet in the playoff rotation. He's logged through 4 games about as many minutes as Mo Diawara, Jose Alvarado, and Landry Shamet combined.
Yep.
That is insane to me. He has 62% of his shots in the Hawks series have come at the basket. He's still trying to battle on the offensive glass. He's battled defensively. He is still first team all. I wish he would just shoot better from the 3-point line. 0 of 4 in this series. He is 0 of 4 from this series. So it doesn't take a ton of them. I just wanted to tip my cap to the Jordan Clarkson experience. Can maybe still be infuriating, but the Knicks have outscored the Hawks by 17 points when he's on the floor. He's been one of their best perimeter players at getting looks at the basket, in part because of the work that he's putting in on the, or trying to put in on the offensive glass, even though he doesn't have, or he has 9 offensive rebounds in this series. That is 3rd on the team, and it is behind only Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns. That is nutso stuff. So he's been kind of a breath of fresh air in a way that is wildly uncomfortable.
And only offensive rebounds. Only. Does not have a single defensive rebound. Which just, and that's fine. That's not a criticism. It's just he knows what he needs to do.
He knows what he needs to do, and then also defensively, he's just going to be ideally so far away from the basket,
right?
Unless they're trying to. But it's funny too. I think maybe there never would have been a time, but if him and Jalen Brunson are on the floor, teams are going after Jalen Brunson first. If it's like him and Cat, no, they're going to try and target Karl Anthony Towns before they're going to. And now you could game matchups so that those two are going to be in higher profile situations, regardless. But I had him. I think I wrote something that said his role in the rotation is gone and never coming back. And this was like in the turn of the calendar. I think that was around the time where I was like, oh, Tyler Kolek is the answer for their backup point guard woes. Look at what Mo Diawara is doing. And he's been a surprise in the sense of, it's not just that he's in the rotation, it's that he's so prominently in the rotation and that he's doing things that Jordan Clarkson isn't known to be doing. When did you consider Jordan Clarkson any of the things a try hard on defense, someone who works on the offensive glass and is putting pressure on the basket? And to be fair, a lot of that pressure is coming from the offensive rebounding opportunities, but still, and he's, what is he, 33? This is just like, I know he had carte blanche in Utah in a way that you necessarily couldn't glean too much into the player that Jordan Clarkson was, but this is nuts.
The fact that he has not hit a 3 this series and he is prioritized to this extent actually tells you everything you need to know. Because usually we would assume that a somewhat heavy minute usage version of Jordan Clarkson was hitting everything under the sun. He's not. And it's effort, it's defense. It is just, you know what the player he actually reminds me of a little bit these days? Bruce Brown, just a connector. Does all the dirty stuff.
Such a wild thing to say. Like, completely. I'm not insulting you. It's just a crazy thing to say.
Right? Yeah, I agree. It is, but that is where we are right now with him. I think it's a good shout. It is certainly geeky because I thought, we go a little big picture. This is certainly not big picture, but I appreciate it. Yes.
Well, it's big picture in the sense that if you're the Knicks and now you have Jordan Clarkson on a minimum contract is this important, what is the plan going into there might be a team that gives him more than the minimum. I know he chose New York to go to, but would you throw a biannual or a mini MLE, which the Knicks will not have, at Jordan Clarkson? There might be a team that says, yeah, I'll throw $5 million at Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah, five. Yeah, well, at that age, at 1 year, you're muted, sir. Sir, you are muted.
The veteran minimum for him is like what, almost 4 at this point, so it's not a huge difference from the mini MLE. So maybe that doesn't matter. Take us to our next pick.
Look, CJ McCollum. Okay, come on. We've gone through a lot of Knicks Hawks things. Let's agree this is the last one. There's no more Knicks Hawks topics here. I love the acquisition in the Trae Young trade. I think I told you, or it may perhaps have been Brian Saporik, that I actually love the fit there better than Trae, specifically for CJ, because he can play on the ball and off the ball, and he can just weave himself in and out situations. I think he's a guy who can scale back. I think he's a guy who can scale up. I think he's just a guy you need to have taking shots, but in different frameworks every single game. Like one day, yeah, you might actually have to have him score primarily unassisted. Second game, be a spot-up guy, come in and play off the ball. He is just leveling up in terms of his overall flexibility right now. I don't know what I had him pegged as earning next year. Like, I probably would have thought someone in the range of like the full non-tax MLE. I don't think you can justify that anymore. Like, that ship sailed. He's getting more, and rightfully so, because he is just proving himself to be too damn valuable. The Hawks should do everything in their power to get him back. He fits this team so perfectly because he doesn't do the same thing as Trae Young to that extent. Like, the way that they traded him out to open up for Jalen Johnson, well, CJ has enriched that. He has empowered that off his own play. And while Jalen has struggled this series, then we've seen that CJ can step up and say, all right, I'll take care of business. Just bang on job for CJ McCollum. Big surprise.
He has hit a lot of tough shots, been driving the ball well. He's been able to pick on Jalen Brunson, but the Knicks, they've thrown different bodies at him too. He hit a lot of big shots. He's been fantastic. And this is, we don't talk enough about him being one of the players who he is still does like to work from the mid-range, but he just decided, it felt like there was a 1 year, he flipped the switch. It's like, no, I'll just become like a pull-up 3-point shooter instead. And that's just what he's able to do now.
Right.
I think the Hawks should be able to bring him back. The teams with cap space this summer, the Nets, the Lakers, and the Bulls, so far, none of those teams are going to go after CJ McCollum. But I do agree with you that he's now probably going to get more than the mid-level, because the Hawks, he has been their most important offensive player in this series. And you can talk about, it's cool how creative Quinn Snyder is at using Dyson Daniels when he's the screener, and then how they get the interplay between a him or a Jalen Johnson, or just the actions that involve all three of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, and Jalen Johnson. CJ McCollum has been their most important offensive player in the series against the Knicks, where they are tied 2-2, by the way, and had a 2-1 lead. So someone's mad in the chat that we haven't covered Ayo yet.
I'm pretty sure we're going to get there.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm pretty sure.
So I did not see this coming from CJ McCollum, this late career, and he's not talking about CJ McCollum in the chat. He's talking about Jayson Tatum, who I'm just not. Jayson Tatum's been great. I don't know that I'm surprised. Maybe I am surprised. That's a good one of like how far along he is coming off an Achilles. But anyway, CJ's been great. I would agree with you. He gets more than the mid-level. I think there's a chance. What was he making this year? Was he in the 30s? Was it 30s?
34?
Okay, so he's probably getting in the 20s. It's like a 2-year, $50 million deal or something if he's playing this way.
Mm-hmm. That seems reasonable.
Yeah, he's been great. Another surprise for me, just out of spite, I'm going to avoid Boston altogether now. We're going to delay Boston further. We've waited enough to talk about Ayo Dosunmu just becoming a superstar. He's just been great for the Wolves. And I think everyone agreed that he was going to be an important pickup at the trade deadline. You could make the case right now, and James Harden and Jaren Jackson Jr. are two names that were moved at the deadline. Anthony Davis was moved around the trade deadline. He's been the most important trade deadline acquisition. When you look at the offensive load that he's been able to carry for the Wolves, someone who adds some tempo to even when they're playing in the half court, of every single player this postseason, and there are 42 of them, averaging at least 7 drives per game, Ayo Dosunmu was second in shooting percentage off of those. He's shooting 72.2% on drives right now. The player in front of him, by the way, which is actually kind of surprising because he hasn't looked right all the time, Anthony Edwards is shooting 80% on his drives. I think that's a testament to Denver's defense or lack thereof as well, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the stuff that Ayo, as someone who's going to come in and run your primary offense, no, not ideal, but can fit alongside all these other guys on the offensive end. You can count on him to make 3-pointers. You can count on him to get your team out in transition. You can count on him defensively to where if you say, even if he's your second ball handler, and you think that it's Edwards or that's only when they're healthy, if it's going to be Julius Randle as your primary ball handler, if you can look at this and say, you know what, our secondary ball handler is just not a defensive liability, and we're going to give him, Jaden McDaniels is going to take a bulk of the reps of Jamal Murray, but we're going to throw Ayo on Jamal Murray a little bit. But he'll guard Cam Johnson. He'll guard Tim Hardaway Jr., who is one of those guys who will be constantly moving. He's been fantastic. And we talked about Jalen Duren probably costing himself more money than anyone else in the postseason so far.
Yeah.
Who has made themselves more money than Ayo Dosunmu right now? Oh, yeah.
Look, when I said at the trade deadline that this was one of the most underrated trades in that whole time frame, people were asking me what I'd smoked. And I concede that it's because I've watched Ayo a fair bit because of my previous ties to the Bulls. He's always
my previous ties with
the Bulls. I'm going to flesh that out because you and I have a mutual friend who is just constantly ripping me on Blue Sky and calling me a Bulls fan, and it's very, very annoying to the point where I'm actually considering just flying over, ringing his doorbell, smacking him in the face, and then flying back over again because that needs to happen at some point. Ayo has always been good, and not just, he's pretty good. No, good. Capital G, good. The thing is, he's never been a guy who's drawn headlines, right? Like, he's never been this guy who's, gone out and had this 43-point performance and just shown the world, he's at that level. He's consistently been a guy who's played off of, primary players. He's been this guy who's just been a great point of attack defender, but never one who's gotten the recognition of doing so. He started out his career as a good shooter, but not a great shooter. Now we're entering that great territory. And he just never broke through, Mr. and Mrs. America's conscience. Now he has. Now he has to a certain extent. And I've just been waiting on it because he is the second best guard the Wolves have. Sorry, Dante.
Well, rude. Dude just suffered an Achilles injury. That's so bad.
All right, okay. That actually was very rude. So, legitimately, Dante, I'm sorry. The first sorry was fictitious. This isn't. I'm very sorry about your injury, sir. But even fully healthy, Ayo's got you beat. They acquired a guy who I think next year is going to be a full-time starting point guard, assuming they hang on to him because he's an unrestricted free agent. Teams are gonna be after him, as they should. He is so plug and play-ish that it's ridiculous.
Yep.
And I don't think people understand the luxury that comes with that, because you're not gonna shoehorn him into a role. He will bend to your system, not a lot of players do that. He does. So he's going to be a favorite for so many teams out there. But if he sticks with the Wolves and Ayo Edwards backcourt moving forward, not hating it.
You think the Bulls could sign him with their cap space?
You know what's weird, though? Apparently, someone alluded this to me recently. Apparently, Ayo had opened up for this with the Bulls. Apparently, he didn't even want to go. He was like, no, I'm interested in staying here.
Wasn't there an interview or something he had given where he said he wanted to basically retire in Chicago, or am I making that up?
Apparently, yes. And like they had every chance to retain him because he was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'm a Chicago guy. And then they traded him for a very, very non-impressive trade package. Look, I love the fact that Ayo Dosunmu got out of Chicago because he's actually got the chance to play competent and interesting and relevant basketball. Mm-hmm. So this is awesome. And to see him flourish this way is just heartwarming. Good on you, Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah, question from Andrew in the chat. If they were both free agents this summer, who gets more, Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Ayo Dosunmu?
Oh, that's a really good question, man. I still think NBA general managers do tend to overrate scoring a little bit occasionally from the guard spot. So I think the volume, 3-point volume behind Nickeil will probably just put him over. Yep.
I think the track record now of Nickeil Alexander-Walker is, but he struggled offensively in the playoffs this year, which he's done before too. So you could, that's a really good question. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's the better defender and just as plug and play on offense, to where Ayo's probably giving you a higher ceiling on the offensive end, right? Does that sound right?
I think that's fair. But also, like, we're really getting dictated by, a couple of games here. Like, he had 25 and then followed up by 43. And right now, obviously, we're all talking about him to this crazy extent. Like, are we going to evaluate his future earnings based on, like, game 5? Like, if he has a stinker there, has he then lost $8 million a year? Like, I want to know where
the playoffs are wild though, because every game kind of changes your preconceived notion. So yeah, I would be with you there.
Yeah, like if Ayo just averaged 20 from the rest of the series, he's good. It's fine.
Oh, he might need to for just because. The rest of the series might last a game too. Is the other thing that we need to throw in there. My next surprise, I'm doing this out of spite, just because I did have Boston on my list. But I'm going to go with Baylor Scheierman. I just want to say I was skeptical that he would be able to shoot in the playoffs and that the stuff he did would fully translate. But as someone who hustles on the offense, just filling in the gaps, hustling on the offensive glass, he has shot the 3-ball well while taking over 3 attempts per game. He's not a prominent part, like the most prominent part of the rotation. But you got to appreciate what they're able to do with him defensively. He's taken a lot of the VJ Edgecombe assignment, and VJ Edgecombe has gone off at points. But in terms of like maybe the ball not getting to VJ Edgecombe or the ball getting out of VJ Edgecombe's hands, I am a lot higher on Baylor Scheierman. Even as Boston Celtics fans will tell you that he was coming on at X point this season, he's been good, and I think that he's going to be someone who's more useful on offense than I had initially anticipated. Unless you have any thoughts on him, though, Jayson Tatum is worth mentioning, just as someone, as pointed out in the chat, just averaging 25 points a game around there. Incredibly efficient. Was he at like 55% on twos?
9 rebounds, 8 assists. Yeah, just ho-hum for a guy returning from an Achilles injury. Look, man, I want to say something about this because it's something that sits with me. Like, people have been a little bit after me with Tatum because I've said repeatedly we don't know which shape he's going to show up in. And the reaction to that has always been, oh, come on, he's Jayson Tatum. He's going to be fine, which I think is just a flawed way of looking at things. Mm-hmm. Now that he's come back, people have been like, look, I told you so. I'm happy for him. Like, what do you think? Obviously, I love that. But it's also fair for a guy to go out with an Achilles injury to be sort of skeptical of, like, how is he going to look coming back? It seems like he's going to be largely unaffected. That's fucking amazing. That's great. I think it would have been so unfair to him to expect him to be, Jayson Tatum after, what was it, 9 months off? 10, 9? I don't remember. But
It wasn't 11.
Right.
He was back quicker than that.
I mean, that's just I think it's fantastic. It's a great story. I hope this maintains as he goes into next season. I didn't think it would be fair to put those expectations on him. But now that he is back to being, this, Boston remains the team to beat in the East to me.
I honestly don't even know if that's up for debate. I was about to say, I think you're right, but who's the answer? If it's not if this is Jayson Tatum, I think the Celtics are probably the team that's second most likely to win the title, unless you want to put the Spurs below the Thunder there. There's just not a debate. Look at what's happening in Cleveland. Look at what's happening, the inconsistency in New York. Look at Detroit. Let's see them get past Orlando first before we're throwing them in there.
I mean, I have San Antonio first, and I have OKC second, and then Boston third.
Do you want to comment that you could, from Andrew in the chat, do you want to comment that you could argue Baylor Scheierman should maybe start over Sam Hauser? Look, I get a kick out of Sam Hauser. When they do the announcements, like you have the player avatars coming up on the NBC and they're announcing the schools they're from. I love that Sam Hauser's is Sam Hauser Washington Elementary. I respect that. So no, Sam Hauser should actually win MVP for that. That's my official stance. I think there's two we need to get to. And I know quickly, I know there's one that you would definitely agree about because it is Collin Murray-Boyles.
Yeah, that was the one. So, look, if we go this one, then you take the second one, and then we wrap it up from there. Like, we already talked about him. The best, in my opinion, raw big in this series against the Cavs. 21 years old, rookie, first playoff series. He is entirely unafraid. You're going up against a front line of Jarrett, Allen, and Evan Mobley, one of whom won Defensive Player of the Year last year. And you are just so undeterred about it, and you keep forcing that ball to the front of the rim, and you keep fucking scoring it, and you keep putting that pressure on that entire defense and getting away with it. Building confidence, and it doesn't take away from your defense either because you're locking guys down. You're rotating. You are calling out stuff from the back line. You're rebounding. You're pushing the ball in transition. This dude is just so good. Like, people will probably not understand it if they just look at the raw box scores for him over the course of the regular season. Like, he is the definition of a guy who is worth more than his line.
Who would you rather have long-term more, Collin Murray-Boyles or Amen Thompson?
Amen Thompson, but that's a hair.
I took Collin Murray-Boyles on the last podcast I recorded with Grant. I think that he's the more versatile offensive player, even if Thompson's handle is better.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think Thompson's overall star potential
upside,
is higher. Yeah, but like, if you're asking me who I think will have the more stable career, it's Collin Murray-Boyles. Yeah,
I'm wondering if he's going to be like the first. This guy reminds me of Draymond Green coming into the draft that actually pans out, or lives up to that, I should say.
Does he have the ball handling as Green?
No, but he's more. He's got
prime Green.
He's got more bunnies though too. Like, he's got more pop to him, and I think
he does.
Probably it wasn't the perfect comp anyway, but every so often these young guys come along, and he has the defensive versatility of a Draymond Green. I think he might live up to, in terms of versatility and disruption, I think there's a chance he could live up to that. Now, a lot of this is he gets to play with Scotty Barnes too, so maybe I'm overvaluing him there, but he's been great. And then the other one, this was also your guy, Scoot Henderson, my guy, Robert Williams III, making things happen for Portland insofar as stuff can still happen. What have been your thoughts on seeing Scoot?
So, Scoot is an interesting player to bring up right now, because he was averaging, 23.3 points per game in this series against the Spurs, and then he laid an egg completely in Game 4. 0 points, 0 for 7 from the field, 0 for 3 from downtown. Like, that was a rough watch. And so I think for me, I'm going to stay positive for what he did over the first 3 games. And I'm going to say, I hope that is going to be something that can be duplicate it down the road. But then you have the game 4 stinker. And you kind of go, do I trust this person to actually give me consistent minutes? I know he can give me the exceptional here or there, but I don't need that necessarily. I need someone who can give me consistent production. Like, I'm going to need someone who can step into a 3-point shot and who won't just brick them. I need someone who won't get into his own head when he's missing and kind of checks himself out of the game a little bit mentally. So high on him over the first 3 games, very low on him in the last one.
I mean, first taste of playoff basketball, so I understand what you're saying there, but that is the question for Portland, is how do you generate consistent offense outside of Denny Avdia? He's the closest thing they have to being an answer. And the thing, because I don't want to step too much on what you were saying, the other thing that's been, I wouldn't say shocking, but it's been a pleasant surprise when you look at, so disappointing has been Shaedon Sharpe, like just being phased out, because I know he came back from that calf injury, but he's never been great defensively, and that's borne out in this series. Scoot not being like this monster defensive liability and you being able to place him on some of San Antonio's guards and it panning out, I think helps as well. If he can, it's consistency for him. But I do have, like, the fact that he was able to do what he did in those 3 games as a 3-point shooter, is getting to his spots there with the ball. Do you view him as someone, though, that where are you at with his passing?
Scoot?
Yeah.
I don't trust it. I think he has games where you can actually expect him to be a primary initiator. And then you have games where you're like, what was I smoking when I had that thought the other day? I think at best he's in secondary, which is probably concerning when you're a lead guard. So I don't know, like, what role we can really envision him in moving forward. He's kind of unique in that sense. Like, the shooting is the same thing. Do I trust the 3-point shooting? Not necessarily. So he just needs to show me a season, and I know he was injured. Like, he missed 52 games. Like, I'm not putting that on him. But he needs to give me a season of data where I'm like, oh, this is what you are. This is what I can rely on moving forward. This is the type of player I know that you're going to be.
I think I actually think he's going to end up being a better passer than I thought, with the way that he's been able to handle, by and large, San Antonio's pressure. And when you compare him in the minutes with someone like a Robert Williams III, a big who can maybe decision make still a little more than Donovan Clingan right now, who's just, if he's not catching it around the basket or spacing to the corner. Which brings me to Robert Williams III. It's just fucking cool to see Robert Williams III play meaningful, impactful basketball again. And this isn't a Donovan Clingan series. This is an RW3 series for Portland. And I want the scorekeeper to be as generous with everybody else's assist numbers when you look at Robert Williams III's and how many dribbles his teammates take after he hands them the ball. But being able to run those plays with Robert Williams III is a big deal. The versatility is still there on the defensive end. The plays that he's able to make around the basket, but also in space, crash the offensive glass. It's just fantastic to see him healthy again. It was not, we all probably just forget because it feels like forever ago, but what are we, 3 years removed from him being in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation?
Yeah. I think that's a good shout. I don't have a lot to add to Robert Williams III. I think now we're getting into
free agent. Interesting. I think he's an interesting. I don't know how much you pay him with you're laughing, but I would get. What? Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm just gonna say if I'm a GM, I look, that injury history is still scary.
He's getting less than the mid level. Would be my
right.
I'm
not touching him.
You got anything else, or can you tell our listeners where they can find you and all the great work that you do?
That I can always do. And you can find my work over at Yahoo Sports. You can listen to the NBA podcast. And if you understand Danish, you can catch me at Buzzer Beater. That's a podcast. Or catch me calling games at HBO Max.
That'll do it for us. Until next time. And as always, I leave you all with a shout out to the one, the only, the indelible, Mr. Frank